The AP European History DBQ review. Today's topic is Thesis and Claim. Today's discussion will include the AP exam and the DBQ rubric. What is a thesis? The thesis point, some thesis examples, and some supplemental to practice. So to review, the modified AP exam for AP Euro will be on May 13th at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It will consist of one modified document-based question scored out of 10 points. It will take 45 minutes to write and analyze the documents with 5 minutes to submit. It will have 5 historical sources with 1 non-text-based source among them. And today's topic will be thesis and claim, so we're going to skim over those. And it will be open notes, so you're encouraged to use your notebook and textbook if needed. However, collaboration is not permitted. You can submit your answer via a text box, PDF file, or copy and paste from a document. Let's go over the scoring criteria for a thesis. It must respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis or claim that establishes a line of reasoning. To earn this point, you must make a claim that responds to the prompt rather than restate or rephrase that prompt. And the thesis must consist of one or more sentences located in one place, either in the introduction or the conclusion. Here are a few guidelines. The thesis is a claim, not a fact. You are arguing a point, and you will use several reasons, usually 3 to fit 3 body paragraphs, while fully answering the prompt in question. It will also forecast the content and order of your essay. It should serve as a blueprint for your evidence, as it will forecast the topic of your 3 main body paragraphs. And it must directly answer all parts of the question in 1 or 2 sentences. It must be placed in either the introduction or conclusion. It must not rephrase the prompt, and it requires you to understand the subject matter, so make sure to bulk up on European history concepts and use your notes if you need to understand the prompt further on the day of. Let's move on to our example question for this video. Evaluate whether or not the Glorious Revolution of 1688 can be considered part of the Enlightenment. So, before we go into this thesis should make a persuasive argument that both identifies Enlightenment principles and evaluates the connection of those principles to the Glorious Revolution. Keeping that in mind, let's read some examples and see why they were strong and received the point, or why they were not. So the first one is the Glorious Revolution of 1688 is a part of the Enlightenment due to its focus on the ideals of liberty, constitutional government, and the rights of the people. This one addresses the prompt, whether the Glorious Revolution was a part of the Enlightenment or not, and uses 3 pieces of evidence: the ideals of liberty, constitutional government, and the rights of the people. And it is forecasting the content and order of the essay's main point, so it's a strong thesis. The second one goes over as the Glorious Revolution of 1688 in England should be considered a part of the Enlightenment because it gave citizens of Great Britain rights and vowed to protect them. However, it cannot fully be considered a part of the Enlightenment due to the lack of religious toleration by some of the people who supported this revolution. Instead of the first one, which corroborated an argument, this one is qualifying it, so it has parts that agree with it and parts that disagree with it, and it still has 3 pieces of evidence. So for one, it talks about how it gave citizens of Great Britain rights and protected them, and the second piece is the religious tolerance that sets it apart from the Enlightenment. So it addresses the prompt, it takes a stance and claim its argument, and it forecasts the content and order of the essay's main points. The third example is the Glorious Revolution of 1688 can be considered a product of the Enlightenment era, but can no doubt be revealed as to be motivated by the older ideals of religious intolerance as well as newer, more liberal values of rights. This one still got a point, even though it was a bit more basic. It still had a stance and claim. It fully addressed the prompt, but the content and order is a bit weak, but it still got the point. Here are some weak thesis examples. Although the Glorious Revolution happened in the 17th century and not the 18th century, it happened in England and Voltaire had not been born at the time. It could be considered part of the Enlightenment according to the behavior of the king and the government, the response to the people, and the comments from other countries. This thesis does not address specific aspects of the Enlightenment. It talks about the behavior of the kings and the response to the people and comments from other countries. It's very vague, and you can write that about any topic really, so it's not a strong thesis. The second one goes as, while the Glorious Revolution did have some similar ideas of the Enlightenment, it cannot be considered part of it itself due to the fundamental nature of the revolution and reasoning behind it. It does make a stance and have a claim, but it does not forecast the content of the essay, and it's not very specific. It's very vague, like the first one. And the final example here is, although the Glorious Revolution occurred in England, it may be considered to be a major part of the Enlightenment movement due to the introduction of legal documents that encourage Enlightenment ideals, as well as the emergence of Enlightenment intellectuals during this time period. This argument does make an argument and does have a stance. However, it's not very specific. It could have went into detail about the documents that were introduced as one of the examples, and some of the intellectuals such as Voltaire and Diderot, who helped push the Enlightenment forward during this time period. Now let's move on to things to remember while writing a thesis on the day of. First, it has to be historically defensible, meaning it has to be supported by specific historical evidence. If not, it won't get you the point. It must be a discrete thesis, so not discrete as in quiet, but it has to be continuous and must be in one place. Your thesis cannot be in two places at once. It has to be either in the introduction or conclusion, and must be next to each. It must be a full continuous thesis. It has to serve as an outline for your body essay, It will outline 3 main points usually and your argument, and it helps the reader see what you're going to talk about, and it helps you plan what you're going to write about. And it must be a claim, not a fact. It has to be arguable, and it must answer all parts of your question. Let's move on to some supplemental. So I suggest if you're struggling with this or want some practice, do some AP exams with some past DBQ questions with scoring commentary on the College Board website. Explore past DBQs and analyze other students' theses. Why did they get the point? Why did they not? So just score some theses of your own and explore what works and what doesn't. Next, practice with some sample DBQ questions, and practice your own thesis and grade it yourself. The more you practice, the more easier it will come on exam day. And receive feedback on your thesis. Maybe show it to a teacher or a peer and have them grade and critique on what you did well and what you can improve. Thesis is all about getting it right. It's an easy point if you know how to do it well, and make sure to practice enough so you can really get a handling of it. Here are some references for the video. So I used the 2017 sample DBQ response from the College Board. I also used the 2020 AP History rubric from the College Board and the AP Euro DBQ rubric from Tom Ritchie. Thank you for watching. Our next video will be about evidence, and it will dive into the modified evidence rubric, which is a lot different this year. So good luck, study well, and have a great day.